Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Kaspa Miniseries. I'm Alex. We are continuing our mission to compress the epic 7.5-hour The Bitcoin Takeover podcast into small, powerful highlight episodes.
And I'm Jamie. In our previous episodes, we've talked about the tech and the philosophy behind Kaspa. But today, we're digging into the engine that powers it all, mining. This isn't just about computers solving puzzles. It's about the economic incentives that secure the network and ensure its survival.
Exactly. The long-term success of any proof-of-work coin lives or dies by its economic design. Today's episode is called Mining and Incentives, and we're going to explore Kaspa's unique emission schedule, the debate around mining centralization, and the billion-dollar question of the long-term security budget.
This was a really meaty part of Yonatan Sampolinski's interview with Vlad. Let's start with one of the first things people notice about Kaspa, its emission schedule. Compared to Bitcoin's slow 130-plus year distribution, Kaspa's was incredibly fast. Vlad's audience wanted to know, what was the original intent behind those rapid emissions?
It's a fair question. A fast emission can look like it unfairly benefits the earliest participants. What was Yonatan's reasoning?
His answer was fascinating because it was a direct response to the failure of another project he had witnessed, Grin. He explained that Grin had what he called a flat minting curve, where there was no real advantage for getting involved early. As a result, it struggled to attract and retain the initial core group of developers and miners needed to get it off the ground.
So he saw Grin as being too fair, to the point where it lacked the necessary incentives to bootstrap a network.
Precisely. He said he was wary of Grin's flat curve and concluded that there had to be some incentive for early adopters. He felt it was better to err on the opposite direction than Grin due to their failure. So Kaspa's rapid emission wasn't an oversight. It was a deliberate strategy to create a strong gravitational pull for miners and developers in the crucial early days, ensuring the project reached escape velocity.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a trade-off between perfect long-term fairness and the practical need to build a strong community from day one. This leads to the next big topic, the hardware used for mining and the risk of centralization.
Right. Like many proof-of-work coins, Kaspa started out being mined on GPUs, the same graphics cards you'd use for gaming. But eventually, specialized machines called ASICs were developed for it. Vlad raised the classic Bitcoiner concern. Don't ASICs lead to centralization since only a few big companies can manufacture them?
It's a huge debate. On one side, you have the ideal of one CPU, one vote from the Bitcoin white paper. On the other, you have the reality of network security. What was Yonatan's take?
He came down firmly on the side of ASICs being desirable. He argued that GPU mineable coins are dangerously insecure. He pointed to the history of attacks where people simply rented massive amounts of GPU power from services like NiceHash to attack smaller networks. An ASIC, on the other hand, is a highly specialized piece of equipment. You can't just rent an army of them overnight.
So, in his view, the security gained by making the network resistant to cheap, rentable hash power outweighs the risk of centralization in manufacturing. It's a pragmatic choice for a more secure network.
Exactly. It makes the cost of an attack much, much higher. This brings us to the biggest economic question of all, one that faces both Kaspa and Bitcoin, the long-term security budget.
Okay, let's break this down simply. Miners are paid in two ways: the block reward, newly created coins, and transaction fees. Over time, the block reward shrinks to zero. Eventually, the network must be secured only by transaction fees.
And a user in the chat pointed out the current reality for Kaspa. Transaction fees are tiny compared to the block reward. This is the case for almost all young proof-of-work coins. So, how does Kaspa plan to close that gap and remain secure in the long run?
This is the billion-dollar question. What was Yonatan's answer?
He laid out a multi-pronged strategy. The first and most important part is the one we've discussed before, fostering a vibrant DeFi ecosystem. His belief is that complex financial transactions on Kaspa's future smart contract layer will generate far more fee revenue than simple payments ever could. He argued the lack of DeFi activity in Bitcoin is harming the chances of recovering the long-term security budget.
So, for him, a thriving DeFi ecosystem isn't just a feature, it's a fundamental requirement for the long-term security of the base layer. The L2 activity pays for the L1 security.
Precisely. But he didn't stop there. He also floated two more radical long-term ideas. The first was what he called social consensus taxation.
That sounds intense. What does it mean?
He referenced discussions in the Ethereum community about taxing layer 2s. The idea for Kaspa would be for the community to socially agree that any new token launched within the Kaspa ecosystem should automatically send a small percentage of its supply, say 20%, back to the miners. This wouldn't be enforced by the protocol, but by a strong social standard. It's a way for the entire ecosystem to contribute to the security of the foundation it's built on.
Wow, that's a very different approach. It's almost like a voluntary tie from the ecosystem back to the network. What was the third idea?
The third was the most futuristic: proof of useful work. He mentioned an innovative new paper that describes a way to secure a network while also performing useful computations, like matrix multiplications for AI training. In this model, the security isn't just paid for by fees and rewards, it's subsidized by a global market for computation. Companies would essentially pay miners to do their AI work, and that work would simultaneously secure the Kaspa network.
So the security budget would be funded by the AI industry, not just by Kaspa users.
Exactly. He was clear this is a very long-term experimental idea, but it shows he's thinking deeply about how to solve this problem from multiple angles. He's not just hoping fees will be enough. He's exploring radical new economic models.
So, to wrap this up, Kaspa's mining incentives were deliberately designed with a fast emission to bootstrap the network, a choice informed by the failures of other projects.
It embraces ASIC mining as a necessary trade-off for higher security against common attacks.
And for the critical long-term security budget, the plan is to rely on a vibrant DeFi ecosystem, while also exploring innovative economic ideas like social taxation and proof of useful work to ensure the network remains secure for decades to come.
It's a comprehensive and forward-looking approach to the economics of a proof-of-work system. And with that, we're wrapping up our final deep dive episode.
What a journey it's been. Thank you all for joining us on the Kaspa miniseries. We hope this breakdown of the marathon interview has given you a much deeper appreciation for the vision, technology, and philosophy behind Kaspa. Thanks for listening.